Another day, another mile. You've been gone a good long while. Another hill, another climb. I can't afford to lose no time. So much road still left to go. Where it ends, nobody knows. And the wind blows in your face. You love the thrill, you love the chase.
China is battling a new and rapidly spreading respiratory virus. Coronavirus continues to spread at speed.
Elwes and George now, just a canvas clear now of Ford and Dawson. It's Dawson Ford who lead for the moment.
You get in a boat and you go on the water, and rather than cheering each other on, you're trying to really, really beat them.
You are gunning for your Olympic seat. It's not like the World Championship seat or World Cup seat, it is your Olympic seat.
Those seconds could really make the difference between being selected in a boat or not.
Like, I always remember, talk is cheap, but until you do it, it doesn't matter. Like, I bet you Jürgen had people saying, yeah, I really want to go to the Olympics. It doesn't matter if you really want to go. Like, what are you willing to do it?
Second semi-final, the men's pairs has just started. Sweeney and Griffiths continue to lead. Gibbs and Rossiter, Matt on the far side, moving. One canvas lead over Gibbs, Rossiter.
It was a kick up the arse turning up to trials and getting a lot of club athletes rowing through me. I also found it humiliating. You know, I was watching people row through me and there was nothing I could do. I found really hard. I hate losing. It's like the worst thing. It's like I have nightmares about it.
The momentum now lies with Shorten McKellar. Now we've got Bosner Gurley piling the pressure on now. Swan and Ford making the move now to dominate this race at this point. 40 Withers putting in a squeeze. They've reduced the deficit to first place by about half a length.
Stomach's filled with butterflies. It's terrible. You know, you're hanging on, waiting for the phone call, you know. You go through it 10 times more than they do, probably, because they're doing it. You're just in the background waiting for the answer, the results.
The starter's orders, getting level. Momentum lies with Gibbs and Rossiter. Rossiter is big in the third 500. Gibbs and Rossiter now just nudging into the lead. And up goes Gibbs and Rossiter. Gibbs, Rossiter, massive push there. Final women's pairs is up and running now. Shitty and Girling now put pressure back onto the front two. Got back to an overlap. Swan forward and Shorten McKellar out front. Going to be Shorten McKellar. Surely are going to take this.
Good evening. The coronavirus is the biggest threat this country has faced for decades, and this country is not alone. All over the world, we're seeing the devastating impact of this invisible killer. From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home.
Well, let's bring you more on that breaking news in the past 15 minutes or thereabouts. It seems now all but certain that the 2020 Olympics in Japan will be postponed. The Japanese Prime Minister, Shinzo Abe, has said in the past few minutes that the International Olympic Committee's president, Thomas Bach, has agreed to a proposal of a postponement for about a year.
Okay, so it's been a really strange 72 hours. We've gone from the Olympics definitely being on this summer to now the Olympics happening in 2021. Yeah, I think my initial reaction to it all is I'm pissed off with things. I wanted it to be this summer. I feel like we've got a really good team. We've got good momentum. I wanted to show what we can do. You know, it is the right decision to delay the games. People, with the spread of this virus, the global pandemic that we're in, like people are dying, and sport's got to come second to that. For sure, it absolutely must do. But when your life is sport, it's a big deal.
Well, this is a bit weird. It was the Tuesday of this week when we found out that the Olympics was going to be postponed. And actually that was probably less of a blow than having to leave Caversham, because by that point we knew it was coming. I mean, it sucks. I'm meant to be going back to medical school next year, in mid-August, and that's not going to happen now. So it's another year of my life on hold.
Tokyo, you build it up so much for this one day. You know, it was, for us, I think the 22nd of July. That's going to be the day to deliver, and it's just suddenly taken away from you.
The last 4 years, what does it mean? I've wasted my life. I've put my life on hold for this, and how do I make sense of that now that this thing? I've always had this fixed state. I've been working towards it, and it's been, sort of instantaneously taken away, and that's a really scary place for a person to go. That all of a sudden, that one thing that's kept you getting out of bed, kept driving, pushing yourself to the limits in some of the ergo sessions you've seen, and that suddenly goes. What is left to keep you driving?
When it first happened and it first got cancelled, you kind of got that like sick feeling in your stomach, and I was just like, fuck. Because like kind of everything you do for 4 years is like pointed in this one direction at this massive thing, and it's a huge event, and everyone watches it, and then you're just like, well, what do I do now? Like right now, as in like tomorrow, do I get up and train? Or do I just like sack it in for a bit? Or like, I just don't know.
Yeah, it throws your whole life up in the air. So it's like, okay, I was maybe thinking about retiring after Tokyo 2020. I hadn't quite decided. But I think it's only really starting to hit me like this in August, like 5 months later. I've been like, geez, this is a big deal, and is the Olympics even going to go ahead next year? I remember just like sitting in the car and I just cried, and like all it came out to me with food, and I was just like, I just need to be alone. And it was just yeah, because I guess everything, then you were like, I've done everything. And I don't know, it was just weird. At that stage it didn't really, like, it never sunk in. Everything's just been so weird that I couldn't believe that it actually gotten cancelled. I trained like 8 years to go to the Olympics, for Jürgen to be like, Catherine, you're in the 8. I was like so happy, and then I was also like, how is this even going to happen? We've just been given our rowing machines to go and start training at home. Boris has announced that gyms are all closing. We can't be in contact with people. Like, what is happening? So it was just very surreal, and didn't really feel like I'd been selected for the Olympic Games.
We then were looking at, well, how do we support the athletes, and how do we help them sustain their own mental and physical well-being over the coming months? And if that means them relocating to their family, because it looks like we're here for a while now in this position, let's support them to do that. So I was already working with members of our team, the psychologists, and the performance lifestyle, to be connecting with athletes. And as soon as that announcement was in place, we had sort of a list of, a ranking of where some of the athletes needed more support than others, and what interventions we might need to put in place.
The biggest challenge was people training on their own, and some were fantastic at it and some weren't. And these are all strong elite athletes, but they've got to this position using clubs, using the National Training Centre, and all of a sudden it's like, actually now use your kitchen and your back garden to maintain and on your own for 6 months. And that was definitely a shift that needed some thought, but also thinking on the run to keep people going.
Tokyo was meant to be my last race. That was meant to be my so long farewell. I was going to retire after Tokyo and put my feet up, never to touch a blade again. And that went knees up, basically. Yeah, the lowest moment was when we found out. I think it was always going to happen, wasn't it? Let's be completely honest. It was always going to get postponed. But I was blissfully naive, and I'm sure a couple of the other guys in the team were as well. I was dead set on it going ahead, really excited to go fast. Been to Tokyo last year to recce the event, and it was awesome, and there was nothing more than I wanted than to go again this year. And when we found out it wasn't happening, I sat down and cried with my girlfriend and went out on a bike ride to do a bit more training. So it's a mental game, I think, at the moment. I think a lot of people will probably be struggling. I haven't been on the water, haven't been on the erg, haven't done anything like that, and that's a risk from my point of view and from my coaches and my S&C coaches.
We made sure there were small groups, coach and groups, crews and groups of athletes connecting, a couple of times a week. And then some of that was just, how you going, what's going on. It wasn't always about training.
For me, it was more around creating a team ethos, sort of speaking and digging into aspects that we don't have time to dig into previously because of people being locked in. We did spend quite a lot of time digging into the background in terms of how to build a better team, how to support each other better, what motivates individuals and what doesn't. The time for conversations was quite high as opposed to just throwing it all into the training.
For some athletes, the trip back home took on an extra dimension. Polly Swan, a silver medalist at Rio, and now a trained junior doctor, could not ignore the fact that she was qualified to help during the pandemic, regardless of the personal risk to her own physiology and chances of getting to Tokyo.
I felt that I had the capacity and the skills to help, that I probably should do that. It was tough because you kind of think, well, maybe I should just train solidly and, with my athlete head on, it's an extra year, but at the same time I just think it wouldn't have sat well with me knowing, just kind of being in the house and not being part of something a bit more. And I might regret it. I'm definitely not as fit as I could be at this point in time. I don't think you need to kind of necessarily be at peak form a year out from the Olympics. I might be wrong, and I might be regretting that in a year's time, but I don't think I will. I think it gave me a break and a bit of perspective. And I do think coming back into training, I feel very philosophical and kind of calm about things, and I think maybe that wouldn't be the case if I hadn't have worked for a bit. So yeah, I don't know. It was a hard one, but I'm glad I made the decision.
The dedication required by the athletes means having to sacrifice time spent with their families and those closest to them. Returning home meant an opportunity to make up for lost time and to reconnect. In doing so, it would also mean having to answer some difficult questions.
I'm really close with, my family, but especially my mum, and I have really struggled talking about it because it is such a awful and kind of traumatic subject for me, because it's something that I don't want to think about, and it's so exhausting having to explain what's happened and what's going on now to one person, and then somebody messages you and it's they're just saying how you are, and it's thinking of you and how's your dad. And so he was just, his blood counts were going down and down and down, and he was getting really quite ill, and his consultant said that he had to go on chemo, and I was told that probably day 3 of lockdown.
Yeah.
And
it was literally the Olympics is postponed, and your dad has to have he's potentially incredibly ill and needs to have chemo.
Yeah. So it was, the Olympics is nothing in comparison to that, and that was the thing that really hit me very hard.
With something like this, there is a potential that it's, he's not got long left, so it's obviously you want to come and spend time with him, but then we with the lockdown, it was we can't drive up there because we could potentially be breaking the law by doing that.
I had to decide if I was going to carry on for a year, or if I was going to, you know, stop and move back to Scotland and look after my family. And my mum was just like, no, like, you should carry on and you should do what you want to do. Like, you're not stopping things because of us. Like, we want you to continue, but only if you want to continue, and if that's what you want to do, then you should go and you should do it. So yeah, and then my mum spoke to my dad about it, and I think my dad just screwed up his face and was just like, why is she asking that? What a silly question. Of course you should carry on. She's not stopping it for us. Like, that's ridiculous.
Unfortunately, the extra year was one step too far for some. Zoe Lee, Pete Lambert, Will Satch, Alan Sinclair, all just a few who called time on a successful rowing career to move on to new adventures at home or abroad.
In the conversations I was having with them, the 1 year extra, you could see was actually going to cause them more issues than actually making that decision now. And, you know, it was just up to us to make sure we supported them and gave them the right transition and the ability to make sense of what had happened. You know, we didn't want them turning around in 6 months going, what the hell have I done? So trying to help them make sense of that and why they made the decision. And the decision was theirs of their own with our support, not one that we'd said, look, you need to make this now.
It's a tough one because you can look at it in two lights, you know, like I was heavily focused on, you know, behind closed doors, calling it a day after 2020 because, you know, that was the last year. It's very sort of poetic to finish on the Olympics, you know. Methodically going through, you know, course stability and training every day here, I've been able to recover a lot better. It's opened up my mind a little bit and I've been able to think outside the box a little bit more than being in a set place in closed walls at Caversham and potentially make a grown-up decision about the next step. Mentally, yeah, I struggled. It definitely helped seeing like really decent scores up the mountain again because I'd been there before and, you know, I felt like I'd been my best up there. So to beat some of those scores was definitely a confidence boost. And I really did need that at the time because it's sort of, I've been struggling for a while. Then came back and jumped in the pair with Harry Glenister. Again, really enjoyed it, started going fast, and then got a back injury, and I was just like, not again, like another one. So, yeah, difficult. Just feel like every time I finish or get to start a training block, I struggle to finish it. And in the past, that never happened.
Any athlete, particularly in the sport for a long time, makes sacrifices, whether it's with their families, with their time, and it's probably not. It's not like any other year, but because it's shifted a year, there's been challenges and opportunities both ways.
My life's just so different here. It's very simple, and like even doing something like this, it's just, I really enjoy it. It's nothing fancy, but I just get a great enjoyment out of it. And I feel like I appreciate the time that I have because I'm not always thinking about like what time of day it is or like looking on my phone or anything like that. Like I'll just stand and like watch these come in and stuff. Really, really enjoy it. I feel more like myself having had time at home than I did at the end of Olympic trials probably. Come on! Definitely that conversation in December, like that was a good thing to happen to me.
She was beaten in the seat race. We then had a meeting which was James, myself and Jürgen, and yeah, just took her into the office and Jürgen, you know, said what she'd done well, what she needed to improve on, but unfortunately at this stage she wouldn't be continuing on.
Hurt, you know, but it forces you to confront your weaknesses and what, like I had asked myself a lot of questions, like did I really do everything properly? Like, am I rowing as best as I can row? Like, am I approaching it every day how, like, a person who wants to win the Olympics is doing it? I had to think like, right, well, are you going to keep training, or like who are you going to train with as well? I was like, am I still part of this like squad, or like do I go back to Mosey? Do I go to Leander?
your heart sinks and you're waiting to hear, oh well, I'm just giving it up. I know Rebecca won't give it up, but you're just waiting to hear. And then by the time she comes to me, she says, yeah, I was disappointed and I cried all day. Well, I says, why didn't you tell me? My daughter's over there crying all day, but she wouldn't let you know. And then she'll come home and she'll have it all sorted out. And she'll say, I'm really disappointed, and and we'll have a bit of a chat. We might even have a wee tear together. And then she said, but this is the plan. And then I just latch on to the next plan. It's the next step.
Like, there were definitely days when I was like, oh, for goodness sake, like, why? But then I was like, no, just keep going, like something will come along. And then about a couple of seconds later, I just remember thinking, I'm so angry, I'm just going to make sure that I get this right. And that's when I kind of switched my attitude around, I remember leaving Calversham thinking, I'm just gonna put my head down. If it's about physicality, well then I'm just gonna get faster on the erg. If it's about strength, well I'm just gonna lift heavy weights, like whatever. Hey, no, see, stop that. So I just decided, right, well, I'm probably the least physical on the team, on the erg and in the weights room. So it's actually a really good opportunity for me because I just spend a lot of time on the erg and a lot of time lifting weights.
We've had a lot of knockbacks. We then heard the Olympics were postponed, so just gives us more time to get faster.
How many people get a second chance at the Olympics? Well, I don't know that that's ever happened before. Right now, it feels like a second chance.
Now, for decades, Team GB has had incredibly successful rowing teams with medalists like Sir Steve Redgrave, Sir Matthew Pinsent and James Cracknell. But one name you might not be so familiar with is Jürgen Grobler, and he is the man behind the medals. The 72-year-old has coached GB to 22 Olympic golds. He was due to retire after Tokyo 2020, but the delay to the Games means he's made his announcement now.
A blow for the team. Athletes were beginning to form household bubbles, with a view to returning to some form of group training, but now without their head coach.
Every time he walks into the room, it's like there's this hush descends because he might depart with a nugget of information, and that might be what wins you your gold medal, and he is literally like that every day, and to lose that is like gutting.
Talked about winning, just taking part. We don't know.
Yeah, we were just in shock, and we just couldn't stop talking about it the whole time. Even my mum was like, she felt quite emotional. I think we all did, really. Yeah. I had a wee cry. Yeah. Yeah, it was just strange. I don't think many people, if anyone, would have anticipated it.
In that, there's a huge opportunity. And it's perhaps, maybe it's come at the right time as well. Maybe that injection of enthusiasm, a bit more control, a bit more autonomy with the coaches, maybe that's going to be that little bit of excitement that's needed to make that last step into Tokyo.
In this room of coaches here, some of them have worked with Jürgen for only 2 or 3 years, some of them have worked with him for 10 years plus. Their experience and knowledge of, they've been alongside him all the way of what his plan was moving forward and his methods are still here. And we have got some really talented coaches who've won gold medals in their own right at the Olympics. And it was more about actually seeing the collective experience and attributes of the coaches rather than saying here's one person to take over that spot.
Change happens, and I think in a way it can be liberating. It's a kind of a glass ceiling. There was not going to be a better chief coach than Jürgen until he decided to move along. So it does create opportunity. We've got an interesting structure now with, they're calling them 4 lead coaches rather than 1 chief coach, and it's working quite well.
It allowed the athletes to connect to the lead coaches in smaller groups to get the real belief going within them. And that coaching team was like, no, we're on this journey. We've been on this journey for 4 years. We don't turn back from that. We just take it forward as we were going to, and with our own passion, our own commitment as well.
With restrictions easing, there was a sense of optimism. as the athletes prepare to return to Caversham. A squad reuniting both on land and on the water provide equal measures of excitement and anxiety.
It's no secret we've not had the best results this Olympiad, and actually, like, we're seeing these numbers just rocketing in this like unbelievable trajectory, and everyone's going, hang on a sec, we might actually be able to do this. You know, we might actually be a team that can hold up our end of the deal, kind of thing. Take Tom George, for example. He's just had another year, and he's just marked himself as pound for pound probably the strongest athlete in the world. And like, he wouldn't have done that had Tokyo happened.
We've already built the foundations through this period, so we're able to like get into cruise maybe slightly earlier and start like looking towards Tokyo and looking towards finding those like extra 1% that will make the difference to like win hopefully in Tokyo.
I want to get back into that routine and like get that feeling again, whereas I feel like I've just been in a blip for a while.
Yeah, I am a bit worried that it's maybe not taken as seriously, or there's just more cases. But we've got a plan, haven't we? We're quite good we know what we want to do and how we want to go about things, and this is an opportunity to kind of learn from what we did last year and last season and then make that right, I suppose.
I will definitely be fitter, probably be stronger, definitely be more mobile. Whether I'll be as robust, whether I'll be as good at rowing, I don't know, but it'll be a lot of fun anyway. Missing a few catches, catching a few crabs.
Eat, sleep, row, repeat. Quickly, the athletes fall back into the regime of training. Before Tokyo, there's racing to be done. The European Championships. Their first competitive race in over 400 days. With that, however, comes the selection process. And with more athletes in seats, decisions need to be made.
I can remember the afternoon, I had 20 meetings to have with the athletes, and only 14 of them were going to be in a crew for the Europeans.
James had asked us all to fill in a sheet about how you want to find out what, you know, so you could get a phone call or an email or face-to-face. And I said phone call.
For some people it was more of a nod in the right direction of like, okay, yeah, I thought I was going to be in that boat, and yeah, that's confirmed. Whereas for somebody like Rebecca, that was absolutely in the balance of a selection decision off the back of the information we'd had.
I was FaceTiming my friend Emma, and then it's James Harris on the phone. I was like, oh my God, right. Emma, I need to go, James is calling. All right, let me know how you get on. And I was like, hello?
We do work in a world where 75% of the team pretty much know they're in the team most of the time and it's business as usual, whereas the other 25% are on the periphery, and half of that's bad news and the other half's positive. So
obviously, because it's a selection, it's all very well presented and like, these are the facts, this is this. And then he went through it all and he was like, so I think you've done a really good job and I want you to be in the women's 8. And I was like, really? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, really, James? Really, me? And he was like, yes. And I was like, oh my God, this is like what I've been waiting for. Like, this is like everything. I actually feel really emotional about it right now. I don't know why I'm crying. Yeah, I was so happy, and I just like, yeah, I was so happy, and I was like, thank you, like, this just means so much to me.
As much as there's bad news to deliver, there's good news to deliver, and I think in Rebecca's case, it was uplifting to feel a sense of how important it was to her and how pleased she was to have it.
I was in the kitchen like, yes, like honestly felt like I'd like scored like the goal that won the Champions League or something. And Polly was in her bed having a nap, and I was like, I got like silently, like not jumping about screaming, but just being like, ah! I always said in my head, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get myself into a boat. And then it happened. And I was like, oh. So yeah, it was good.